Part 1. Headline and Human Welcome. This is a focused report about a powerful earthquake that shook northeastern Japan and the response that followed. Tonight we are going to walk through what happened, who was affected, how authorities and communities responded, and what this event can teach us about living on a restless planet. I'll also explain, in clear terms, why such quakes occur, what the immediate risks are after a large tremor, and how people, organizations and nations prepare for, and recover from, earthquakes and tsunamis. A magnitude 7.5 quake struck offshore near Aomori in Japan's northeast, prompting tsunami warnings and evacuations for roughly 90,000 people. Modest tsunamis were observed at several ports and, after careful assessment, warnings were later downgraded and lifted. Reuters +1. Stay with me. We'll move from the immediate facts into the lived experience of those on the ground, and end with practical advice and larger lessons we can all carry forward. Rehook. What this quake means, for one person, one town, one nation, might surprise you. Part 2. The immediate picture, concise. Close to the coast of Aomori Prefecture, the earth released a large amount of energy. The shaking was strong enough in some cities to register near the top of Japan's intensity scale, the kind of shaking that knocks furniture from shelves, rattles buildings and sends people searching for safe spots. Authorities issued tsunami warnings for coastal areas across Hokkaido, Aomori and Iwate, and tens of thousands were advised to move to higher ground or designated shelters. In the hours after the quake, observed sea surges ranged from small rises to several tens of centimeters at port areas. No large catastrophic tsunami inundation was reported. Reuters +1. What this means for everyday people is straightforward. A sudden, terrifying shaking, a rush to gather family and pets, the decision to leave a home late at night or to huddle in a school gymnasium or community center until officials say it's safe to return. Rehook. Imagine waking in the dark to that shaking, then imagine what comes next. Part 3. The Human Side, Stories and Impacts. Around 90,000 people were told to evacuate. That's 90,000 instances of disruption. Families packing essentials, elderly neighbors being helped downstairs, fishermen watching strange swells roll into their harbors. News reports from hospitals, shelters and municipal centers describe dozens of people injured, mostly from falling objects and minor structural damage, and a handful with more serious wounds. Emergency responders reported small fires, scenes of toppled shelving, and localized damage to fisheries and small port facilities where waves nudged boats and rafts. Reuters +1. In one coastal village, residents described the uncanny sight of a harbor floor briefly exposed, followed by a wall of water that rose and fell, a reminder of the raw power of the sea after a quake. Business owners counted lost days, oyster farmers saw rafts damaged by the swell, and families faced the immediate logistical challenge of finding a warm place to sleep and a way to keep refrigerated medicines safe. These are the small, real costs, personal, economic and emotional, that don't always make the front pages but matter deeply to the people who live there. Rehook. The headlines tell numbers, the real story is in the lives those numbers represent. Part 4. Government Response and Emergency Management. Japan's emergency management apparatus moved quickly. Local officials activated evacuation procedures and opened shelters. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued warnings and continuously updated advisories as new sea level data arrived. Rail and road operators suspended services where necessary, and utilities crews worked to restore power to impacted areas as soon as it was safe to do so. The Prime Minister and national agencies monitored the situation and promised support for local recovery efforts. Officials also reported that nuclear facilities in the region were checked and no abnormalities affecting safety were detected. Reuters +1. That swift coordination is the product of lessons learned from past disasters, especially the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, and the decades Japan has invested in drills, engineering standards and rapid warning systems. Even so, authorities urged vigilance for aftershocks, and for coastal residents to stay informed until the risk had passed. Rehook, efficient emergency systems save lives. Let's look at how those systems work. Part 5. How Japan warns and moves people. Japan's seismic and tsunami warning system is among the most advanced in the world. Seismographs detect shaking almost instantly. Algorithms estimate tsunami risk and trigger alerts across TV, radio, mobile phones and public loudspeakers. Municipalities practice evacuation drills regularly. Children learn where to go from school. Communities map escape routes and local governments maintain shelters. In this event, those systems triggered alarms and evacuation orders, and large numbers of residents moved to safer locations as instructed. Routers. Crucially, authorities use conservative thresholds when issuing warnings. That approach sometimes leads to alerts that later prove to be overcautious, warnings that are downgraded or lifted, but the cost of a false alarm is vastly smaller than the cost of failing to warn when a dangerous tsunami is coming. Rehook, a warning that turns out to be unnecessary is still a sign the system did it. Part 6. The science behind the shaking. Let's take a clear, simple look at why earthquakes like this happen. Japan sits along the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates, the massive slabs that form Earth's outer shell, converge, slip and sometimes collide. The movement of those plates stores elastic energy in the crust. When stress overcomes friction on a fault line, the energy is released as seismic waves. That's an earthquake. Offshore quakes can displace large volumes of seawater, producing tsunamis. The height and destructive power of a tsunami depend on how much water moves, how fast, and the shape of the seafloor and coastline. Routers. Depth matters. Earthquakes at shallow depths can produce stronger shaking at the surface, while deeper quakes have different signatures. Scientists measure magnitude, the size of the energy release, and intensity, the shaking at a particular location, to capture different aspects of an event. This quake was large enough to cause intense shaking in several towns along the northern coast. Rehook, knowing the how helps communities reduce harm. Part 7. Aftershocks and ongoing risk. A major quake doesn't always end in the first hour. Aftershocks, smaller quakes triggered by the redistribution of stress, can continue for days, weeks or longer. Sometimes an aftershock is nearly as large as the first quake. Sometimes it's a steady stream of smaller tremors. Authorities warned residents to expect aftershocks and to secure heavy objects, avoid damaged structures, and be ready to move again if necessary. In the immediate aftermath, these secondary quakes are among the highest risks for additional injuries and disruption. AP News. Listen carefully to local safety announcements. Aftershocks can also trigger additional tsunamis, landslides, and infrastructure failures. The safest course is to stay in well-constructed shelters until officials declare it safe. Rehook. The first shake may be over, but the danger can linger. Part 8. Infrastructure, trains, power, ports. The earthquake temporarily halted bullet trains and local rail lines. Safety systems are designed to stop trains automatically when strong shaking is detected. Power outages affected thousands briefly as utilities isolated damaged lines. Restoration teams worked through the night to make repairs. At ports, small craft were secured and some fishing facilities reported damage from sea surges. In many ways, the resilience of infrastructure, from rails to power grids to seawalls, determines how quickly normal life can resume. Routers +1. Japan's investments in earthquake-resistant engineering minimize collapse risk for many modern structures, but older buildings and certain coastal facilities remain vulnerable. Repairing and rebuilding after a quake is an economic process as well as an engineering one. It takes planning, resources and time. Rehook. Infrastructure failures slow recovery. preventing them is cheaper than fixing them. Part 9. Nuclear and hazard concerns. Because of past experience, people often ask about nuclear safety after earthquakes in Japan. In this instance, officials reported no abnormal radiation readings at nearby nuclear facilities and no safety breaches. Nonetheless, nuclear plants undergo exhaustive inspections whenever a significant quake occurs, and operators monitor cooling systems, water levels and structural integrity. The public vigilance around nuclear risks, and the precautions regulators demand, remain a central part of the national response. Reuters +1. The presence of a large plant doesn't change the basic emergency steps: evacuate when told, follow official guidance, and avoid rumors. Authorities will communicate any credible nuclear warnings clearly and urgently. Rehook. Nuclear safety is checked early and repeatedly after every big trembler. Part 10. Local economies and fisheries. Coastal economies, especially fisheries, small ports and aquaculture operations, feel seismic events directly. Oyster and fish farms can lose equipment or stock when sudden surges hit pens and rafts. Harbors may require dredging after abnormal sediment movement. Local businesses suffer when access is limited, and tourist seasons can be interrupted. Recovery often involves small business support, insurance claims, and community efforts to rebuild. In this event, reports describe damage to aquaculture equipment and temporary disruption to local commerce. AP News +1. For many coastal communities, the sea is both livelihood and hazard. Rebuilding must balance the need for economic activity with the imperative of safety. Rehook. Livelihoods are repaired gradually, but life has to restart. Part 11. Communications, media and information flow. Accurate, timely information is life-saving after a natural disaster. Broadcasters, local governments and social networks each play roles in spreading updates: which roads are open, which shelters are accepting people, where to get medical help. Misinformation can spread quickly, so authorities emphasize official channels, municipal websites, the Japan Meteorological Agency, and emergency hotlines. In many communities, volunteer groups and neighborhood associations also relay vital information to vulnerable residents who can't access digital sources. Reuters. If you have loved ones in affected areas, rely on known contacts and official bulletins. Avoid sharing unverified videos or sensational claims that can spark panic. Rehook. Information is oxygen in an emergency. Use reliable sources. Part 12. Psychological effects and community solidarity. The emotional toll of earthquakes is real. Moments of panic, sleeplessness, and anxiety about aftershocks and property loss are common. Communities often rally, volunteers bring food, neighbors check on the elderly, and local shops open their doors to evacuees. Mental health support teams and relief organizations frequently mobilize to help people process trauma, especially for those who have lost homes or livelihoods. Compassion and practical support make a measurable difference during recovery. AP News. If you or someone you know is affected, reach out to local support centers and community groups. A simple check-in can be the first step toward healing. Rehook. Strong communities cushion the shock of disaster. Part 13. Global context and comparisons. Japan's experience is not unique. Coastal regions worldwide face similar risks where seismic plates meet the ocean. What sets Japan apart is the scale of its preparedness and the lessons embedded in national policy since 2011. But even the best preparedness does not eliminate all harm. This event serves as a reminder that resilient cities require constant attention, updated building codes, public education, early warning technologies and investment in both physical and human capital. International cooperation, sharing data, warning technologies and best practices, strengthens global resilience. Reuters. For countries that lack Japan's resources, disasters can be far more devastating. The global community can learn and help by supporting preparedness initiatives, early warning systems, and local capacity building. Rehook. Disaster resilience is a global conversation. Everyone has a role. Part 14. Practical advice for listeners. If you live in an earthquake-prone area, here are practical steps to take now. Know your evacuation routes and the nearest high ground if you live near a coast. Secure heavy furniture and objects that can fall in a quake. Prepare an emergency kit with water, non-perishable food, flashlights, batteries, a radio, essential medicines, and important documents. Keep a family plan: where to meet, how to contact each other, and what to do if separated. After a quake, check for gas leaks, electrical hazards, and structural damage before re-entering buildings. If you smell gas, evacuate immediately and do not use open flames or electrical switches. Stay tuned to official alerts and avoid driving in major evacuation routes unless necessary. Keep roads clear for emergency vehicles. Support local relief efforts through reputable organizations. Volunteer safely and follow the guidance of local authorities. These are simple actions that substantially reduce risk. Rehook: Preparedness changes outcomes. Part 15. What scientists and officials watch next. Scientists will monitor seismicity in the region closely for aftershocks and any signals that might precede a larger event. Oceanographers and coastal authorities will study the recorded sea levels and how the waves behaved at different ports to refine models. Local governments will inspect infrastructure for hidden damage, and utility companies will check lines, substations, and pipelines. Insurance and economic analysts will begin estimating the financial impacts for businesses and households. All of these activities are part of a methodical process to transform a chaotic night into reliable knowledge that can improve future responses. Rotors +1. This careful, patient assessment is how societies translate danger into lessons and better protections. Rehook: Science helps turn fear into action. Part 16. Remembering past tragedies to build a safer future. The memory of past disasters informs present decisions. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami reshaped Japan's approach to risk. Stricter building codes, redesigned seawalls, improved evacuation maps, and renewed emphasis on community preparedness. That event also taught the world about cascading risks, how an earthquake can trigger a tsunami, a nuclear crisis, or long-term economic disruption. Today's response reflects those lessons: quick alerts, systematic inspections, and a cautionary posture that privileges human life. We remember not to dwell in sorrow, but to make concrete changes that honor those lost. Rehook: Memory fuels progress. Safety is built one measure at a time. Part 17. How you can help from afar. If you want to help but are far away, here are reliable actions. Donate to recognized disaster relief organizations that have local partners. Support charities that provide temporary shelter, warm clothing, and medical supplies. Share verified information from official sources rather than unconfirmed posts. And consider long-term support for rebuilding projects that strengthen infrastructure and community resilience. Small, consistent support often matters more than one dramatic action. Rehook: Distant help is real help when it's steady and sensible. Part 18. Reflections on risk and resilience. Natural hazards will always be a part of life on Earth. What changes is how societies manage those hazards. Investment in resilient buildings, early warning systems, community drills, and social safety nets reduces the human cost of disasters. Equally important is fostering an ethic of mutual aid, neighbors helping neighbors, because in the first hours after a quake, local people are often the first responders. This event is a reminder that vigilance, preparation, and solidarity are our best tools for surviving and bouncing back. Rehook: Risk is constant. Resilience is a choice we must keep making. Part 19. Short summary and key takeaways. Let's recap the essentials. A powerful offshore earthquake struck northern Japan, prompting tsunami warnings, evacuations of about 90,000 people, and reports of dozens of injuries. Observed sea surges were modest, and warnings were later downgraded and lifted following assessments. Emergency services mobilized, infrastructure checks were carried out, and no nuclear safety anomalies were reported. The situation now moves from urgent rescue into measured recovery, inspection and community support. Reuters +1. If you remember one thing from this report, let it be this: heed warnings, prepare wisely, and help your community stay strong. Rehook. The immediate danger may subside, preparedness keeps us ready for the next one. Part 20. Final message for listeners. To people in the affected areas, your resilience matters. Follow official instructions, accept help when offered, and look after one another. To listeners elsewhere, learn the basics of earthquake and tsunami safety for your region, and support credible relief efforts if you want to contribute. This was a calm, comprehensive account intended to inform and to help. I'll end with a simple closing. Be prepared, be kind, and keep watching the official channels for updates from local authorities. The planet will continue to move beneath our feet. Our best response is steady hearts and smart plans. Thank you for listening. Keep safe. Rehook, our final pull. Stay informed, stay prepared.